Let me take a look who's in here today. Okay, good. My name is Mike. It's good to see you all, Spring of Life Church saints. And on this day of days, I love Mother's Day because it's really a time of unity for the entire world. Christmas time, some people celebrate Christ, some people celebrate Christmas gifts. Easter, some people celebrate, the Easter Bunny, and other people celebrate the resurrection of Christ. But Mother's Day, we all know what we're celebrating or who we're celebrating. And this is great. And when Pastor Igor told me when I'd be preaching, what day I'd be preaching on, it's been a while. It's good to see you all, by the way. It's good to be here. It's good to be on stage and preaching. When Pastor Igor told me when I'd be preaching, you know what I said? I said, finally, I can give some good advice to mothers in the room. As a 26-year-old single guy, I feel like I have so much to give to the mothers here. Now, fair enough, Bible can be preached by anyone, and Bible is Bible, and the message is the message. It doesn't come from the person. But I want to preach about something slightly different today. The only thing I really want to say to mothers, the one thing I want to say to mothers today is, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. And to my own mother, I have two things to say, if she's watching. Thank you, and I'm sorry. Okay, let's not get emotional here. Come on, we got a sermon to preach. What I want to talk about to you today is a fundamental commandment. One of the 10 commandments, and it's really just kind of all-encompassing, for one side of the 10 commandments to the other. And it may not apply only to mothers, but it does apply to our parents. And you already know, I'm talking about the 5th commandment, honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land that the Lord is giving you. The 5th commandment, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about it. And it's important because, although it's so foundational, it sometimes gets slid under the rug a little bit. Like there's important commandments out there, like don't kill, right? That's a pretty good one. Or honor the Lord your God above all other gods. And then there's honor your father and your mother. So why is it so important? Why is it so foundational to us, not only as a church, but also as an entire world, as an entire society, and as Christians that have a relationship with Christ? Well, there they were. There they were, the Jews that came out of the land of Egypt at the fiery Mount Sinai, where there's smoke and lightning and everything's billowing out, and Moses comes out and God says through him, listen to your parents, my people. And God revealed commandments that are after his heart. And not only that, God revealed his own nature to his people. And the 5th commandment says to honor your father and your mother. Now, as we know, when Jesus was asked what was the greatest commandment, he kind of divided all of the prophets and all of the laws into 2, right? You remember what they were? The first greatest commandment is to love your God. Yes, love your God with all your soul and all your heart and all your mind. And the second one is like it. Love your neighbor. That's right. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And now this commandment is kind of defining. It's like all-encompassing. It grasps that second kind of camp of commandments. Because commandments 1 through 4, they talk about honoring God and loving God. And then commandments, the rest of the commandments talk about loving your neighbor. You shall not kill, you shall not covet, steal, and all that. So that's the way they're kind of divided here. And in this commandment, we're talking about the second camp, our relations, the relational commandment. And let's just be honest today, church. Sometimes it's a lot easier to love your friends than your family. Am I right? Sometimes it's a lot easier to open up to your friends than your family. But how are we going to honor our parents if we don't honor God? How are we going to honor our friends and our neighbors and the church and our pastors? How are we going to survive here if we don't honor our parents? So this is why this commandment in particular is so important because honoring our mother and father is foundational for our entire society, really. I mean, we look at our society, and you know I love Tim Keller. I love the preacher, Pastor Tim Keller. I love his teachings. And this is what he says. He says, it's respect for parents that is the basis for every other kind of respect and every other kind of authority. Now, no society can function without honor and submission. No society really can function without some kind of authority, at least on a large scale, right? It's without authority there will be chaos. And where do we learn this authority? Where do we learn this honor and submission? What do we not learn from our parents, right? We learn it at our homes with our parents. I think that's why the Israelites, when they were in the promised land, they saw all these other kingdoms and they saw they had kings, they had authority, somebody ruling over them. But the Israelites were supposed to have God as their authority, God as their king. They couldn't see God. They couldn't really submit to God. So they asked Samuel, the prophet in charge, give us a king, Samuel. Give us a king so that we can have authority, so we can be like these other nations, so there can be order here and not chaos. So our society, even today, based on honor and submission. I mean, we submit to the police officer that pulls us over, right, when we're going 70 in a school zone, or when we don't stop all the way on that right turn and it's dark and there were no even cars around and the camera got you, and absolutely ridiculous, in theory. We submit to that ticket that we get, even though we try to deny it. And then in turn, that police officer that pulls us over or gives us the ticket, whatever, that police officer submits to the laws of the land that we technically create. They submit to the judge that interprets those laws, right? And that judge, in turn, submits to the laws that we create. And it's a cycle of submission and honor. I'm sure a lot of us heard about the recent Roe versus Wade being overturned, possibly in the future. And in that, if you read the draft that got leaked, where basically they're thinking about overturning the abortion law. And the draft that basically said the Supreme Court shouldn't have made that decision in the first place because it's not in the Constitution. Supreme Court was in effect making a new law when their job was only to interpret those laws. And so they're saying they were supposed to submit to the law rather than create it. And once we are in court, when the judge walks in, what do we call her? She walks in, everybody stands up, Your Honor, Your Honor. I'm sure all of us have been in a courtroom lately, at least online, certain high-profile case. We've all become experts. We've all taken sides here. So this honor and this submission is crucial for society. And so when we lose that honor, honor is at an all-time low in our country, at least, for authority. Every type of authority we question nowadays. When we lose that honor, submission is not too far behind. And when we lose submission, when we lose that cycle of submitting to one another and honoring one another, then society, the end of society, is coming to an end. And I think that's why this commandment comes with a promise. I think that's why when God tells the Israelites to honor your father and your mother, that it may go well with you in the land, that if there is authority there, if there is submission and honor in your culture, then you will have peace. You will have progress. You will have joy in this land, and you will live long. And on the other hand, when Paul writes to Timothy, he talks about the end times. And one of the signs of the end times, which is kind of surprising, always kind of puts me on the back foot, one of the signs of the end times is that the people will be disobedient to their parents. I believe that's 1 Timothy 3:1. He says, in the end times, people will be disobedient to their parents. And that makes sense, because if we lose the authority, if we lose the respect and honor for them, then the end of society as we know it is near. But it's not just a basis for our society, right? This authority and honor, it's also a basis of how we treat God. How we treat our parents is usually how we tend to treat God. Look in Malachi chapter 1, verse 6. Here's what God says. He says, A son honors his father, and a slave his master. If I am a father, where is the honor due to me? If I'm a master, where's the respect due to me, says the Lord Almighty. And this is where we see where the heart of God is, when he tells us to honor our parents. Because God knows our respect and honor for our parents is the basis of our respect and honor for him. And we see this all the time, where people that have grown up not honoring their parents, for one reason or another, they tend to be more rebellious, both in society and between them and God. This is where the heart of God is. And if we do not honor our parents, how are we going to honor God? I mean, we call God our Father, but if we hate our earthly father, it's going to be very difficult to honor our Heavenly Father who we cannot see. So really, when I said this commandment is formative for the second camp of commandments where we have our relationships together, it's also formative for the first camp of commandments, both love your God and love your neighbor. It's going to be difficult to do both if we do not honor our parents, if we do not honor that authority. Now, of course, don't worry, saints. I know there's difficulties with this commandment. I know there's things like, but Mike, what about this? I know what you're thinking. We'll get to that, okay? We'll get to that in a second. I just want to point to the heart of God again, real quick. He says, whoever reviles his mother and father deserves to die. He says, the eye that mocks the father and scorns to obey a mother will be picked out by ravens in the valley and eaten by vultures. Yeesh. This is rough stuff. It's heavy stuff. And it's heavy because it's important. It's a crucial commandment, not to be swept under the rug, but to live out every day. So yes, it's important. But before we get to the practical side of this commandment, how do we honor our parents? What does honor mean? Let's address some of the difficulties here, all right? Let's address the elephant in the room, because not all parents deserve honor. At least that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like sometimes. Not all parents are good parents. And we have to recognize that. I mean, there's bad parents, there's non-Christian parents, there's abusive parents, and parents that you don't even call parents because they've abandoned their children. And it is a terrible burden. It is a terrible burden for those who have to walk with that. And unfortunately, I cannot speak, and I'm sure most of us cannot speak from that place here of having those kinds of parents, because I have amazing parents and I love them, and I'm sure a lot of us did as well while growing up and even now. And for those people that have had to endure the struggles and the conflicts that had to do with bad parents, I can't say much. I can't say much to help, but I can say this. I can say that the commandment, this fifth commandment, it doesn't say to honor the honorable parents. It doesn't even say to honor the good parents. Just the parents that you got. The parents that God gave you. And of course, does that mean obedience in absolutely everything that your parents say? No. Obviously not. If you have those kinds of parents, then, I mean, you can't follow Christ and sometimes your parents' commands at the same time. That's why Jesus came in. That's why he said, I'm here to set mother against son, father against daughter. There will be division in the house. I bring the sword. Because Jesus knew that if you follow him, you're going to have to leave things behind. And your loved ones, your parents, might not always want that. And so Jesus says, I come in here, I come bringing conflict. There will be war among you. There will be disobedience, but necessary disobedience. And disobedience does not mean dishonor. That's what we got to remember. Disobedience does not always mean dishonor. And look, if you are able to honor those bad parents, if you are able to honor that burden, then imagine how much more you'll be able to honor a good father, a good parent who is in heaven. But it's not easy. And I recognize that, and we should all recognize that it's not easy. And for those who have started their own families, I really appreciate Zhenya coming out and saying that intro, saying that he is also a child, because we are all children. I mean, look, I'm not talking to the people who are living, 1 to 18-year-olds here. I'm not just talking to those people. I don't want the parents in this room to be like, okay, here we go. Let's see my kids listen to this one. We're gonna get this. We're gonna write this down and gonna bring it back to them. No, I'm not talking to parents right now. Okay, not. But I am talking to all of you. I'm talking to kids. Okay, I'm talking to children, because we all have parents, or we all had parents. And honoring your mother and father, it does not only apply to people who are still living with them, like Jane said, and honoring them doesn't even apply to the parents that are only alive. Whether you still have them or you don't, we are still called to honor them in these ways, as we're going to talk about it. There may not be the same call of obedience, but there is that same call of honor. So how do we honor our mother and father on this day of days? Well, one rabbi said it this way. He said, to what lengths should the duty of honoring parents go? Well, even were they to take your purse full of gold and cast it into the sea in your presence, you must not shame them. You must not manifest grief in their presence, display any anger, but accept the divine decree without hesitation. That's heavy. I mean, imagine your parents just emptied your bank account today somehow. Took all your stock investments, took all your crypto, sold all your NFTs. I know everybody here is super into that. But just imagine that happening. This is kind of crazy. Not gonna lie, this is kind of crazy, but when we think about it, all commandments are kind of crazy. I mean, even about the bit about murdering your brother and how Jesus clarifies it to be angry or calling your brother names. All commandments are crazy, but because they're so important. So, actually I was looking around before I started the sermon. I was looking at you people for a reason. I was looking to make sure all the right people were in the room and all the right people are watching online. And just so happens that it is. Very happy because I think it's time for a confession, okay? And since only the people in the room are the ones that I would trust my life with, I feel safe saying this confession. So here goes. I have not honored my parents as I should have. Just being honest. I haven't honored them as I should have. I should have honored them more. I should be honoring them more now. I should be better as a son. And I think if we're all being honest here, I think we can all say that. I think we can all say we should be honoring our parents more, in the sense that we're not all perfect in this. We're going to talk about some of the ways that we should be honoring our parents. But let's just be honest with each other, that none of us here is better than somebody else in that. We should all strive. We should all work for that. Okay? Great. Thank you for listening. I knew you'd do it. I knew you'd take me and accept me and love me. So thank you. Well, the first thing, let's just get this out of the way. Okay, church? One way that we can honor our parents, I'm going to have 3 here, of course. I'm going to have 3 major ones. Although there's a bunch, about the bit about taking the purse and throwing it into the sea, not showing anger, not mistreating, respecting, talk well of them out in public, buying your mom flowers. All of those are great ways to honor your parents. But these 3 big ones, I just kind of touch on them real quick. First one, as we know, is obedience. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, Paul says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother." That is the first commandment with a promise. "So that it may go well with you, and that you may enjoy a long life on earth." Obedience. Now, when I said the thing about disobedience earlier, just got to be clear here. Probably not talking to most of you, because most kids in America don't go to church against their parents' wishes. Most kids in America go to church because their parents forced them to go to church. I mean, can I get an amen? I mean, who's been in that stage? Oh, who knows the struggle of Sunday morning, pretending you have a stomach ache. Yeah, yeah. But obedience is maybe one of the most important ways that we honor our father and mother. Now, obedience can be messy. Obedience doesn't always look good. Okay, obedience is about action. And I love how Jesus brought up this one parable in Matthew about two sons. Two sons, not the prodigal sons, although maybe, who knows, who knows. In Matthew 21, verses 28 through 31, he talks about two sons to whom their father commanded to go work in the field. So the father comes up, says, son number one, go work in the field. And son number one says, nah, I don't want to, Dad. And then father goes to this son number two and says, son number two, go work in the field. Son number two says, yeah, sure, Dad, I'll go ahead and do it. Some of you remember, probably most of you remember this parable. First son, Jesus says, first son who denied his dad, probably changed his mind at the end and went and worked in the field. Second son, who said, yeah, sure, Dad, ended up not working in the field for one reason or another. And Jesus asks, who honored their father's will? Who was obedient in this scenario? And of course, the Pharisees and everybody knew the answer. They said the first son. Even though that first son disagreed and disobeyed, it's about action. It's not about saying what you do. It's about doing what you say. So, and some people make it look like, right? Some people make it look like they're good at obeying their parents. They're good, obedient people. Even when you're young, even when you're old, you live as if you obey your parents. But when we look a little bit deeper into that life, we realize the way their parents raised them up, the way their mother taught them, and the way their father taught them, they might say that they do that. But you look a little deeper in their life, you don't really find that. You don't really find it. They say, yes, I'll go work in the field, but when it comes to actually working, nothing seems to get done. Obedience is about action. It's not just about making it look like you're honoring your parents, whether they're here or they're gone from your life at this point. It's about doing and acting the way they brought you up. All right? And of course, we got to go back to it. We got to go back to that obedience, because sometimes there will be times when you just can't obey. There will be times when you just can't do it for one reason or another. Well, thankfully, actually, Bible makes a provision for that. I know this is crazy, but let's read this. Let's read 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 1. It says, do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort or encourage him as if he were your father. And then he goes on to say, treat the older women like your mothers, and so on and so forth. Now, Timothy was a young guy. He was a young pastor, and Paul is teaching him how to conduct him in this congregation. There were older people there that were wiser, and they had to be shown the proper respect, but Paul knew, and Timothy knew, that you won't be able to agree on everything with those people. In fact, as a pastor, you'd have to lead. It was on Timothy to lead the church. He would have to disagree. He would have to disobey those older folks. So Paul tells him, it's not about obedience in everything, but if you have to disagree, don't do it harshly. Don't get rid of the honor in the situation, in the equation. Don't get rid of the honor, but encourage them. So instead of saying, no, old man, you're wrong, be like, oh, I see your point. Have you considered this? You know what it's like, the good communication skills, that where you don't disobey, or you disobey, but you do it in a respectful manner, in an honorable manner. I learned this myself when I was, I think, 16 or 14. My whole family was getting ready to go to Canada for a vacation, of all places. Look at some moose, I guess. Mooses? I don't know. But they were going to Canada for vacation. Sounds like a good time. I was, for some reason though, I really did not want to go. I don't even remember the reason. I was so dead set against it. You would not force me into Canada. No, thank you. I couldn't do it. I I had pride. I had to stand up for myself. And I was thinking, I fought so much with my parents. I always disobey. I always yelled. But this time, I don't know why, but I felt it was so important that I had to take a different approach. So I thought of the best way to convince my parents not to go to Canada for me to be able to stay home with my brother. And I thought, and so I ended up writing like a whole essay by hand. And I brought it up to my mom and my dad, and I was like, look, these are the reasons why I shouldn't go to Canada, okay? These are the reasons that I can't do it. And it was passionate, it was logical, it was all the great, it was like a whole sermon. And you know what? I have amazing parents. In the end, they let me stay home with my brother, not go to Canada. And that was the point. I think, well, I didn't become a man by any chance, but I learned something. I learned something about respect and honor, and that you can have good, healthy relationship with your parents, even if you don't agree on everything, even if you don't obey them in everything, although you do obey them in most things. And you know, looking back, I probably should have just gone to Canada. I don't know. But in that moment, there was something to learn. So we got to obey. We got to obey, but even more so, we got to honor our mother and father through action, not just through words. What about this second thing? The second way we can honor them is through forgiveness. First one's obedience, second one is forgiveness. Now, just like we have honored our parents the way we should have, let's recognize that our parents haven't brought us up in the perfect way. Our parents made mistakes. They make mistakes. And that's all right. Obviously they make mistakes because they're human. They have to. I mean, well, it just happens. And unfortunately, these mistakes are sometimes painful. These mistakes are hurtful, and sometimes it's painful, and we take that pain and we carry it with us for a long time. Usually we take and internalize that pain that our parents caused us, and we walk through life with it. And it may not even show itself, right? We may not even know about it. I mean, every single study, every single psychologist out there, every single science has already proved this, has already shown this, that most people do walk around with unresolved trauma caused by their parents. Maybe it was some physical thing, some kind of physical pain that their parents caused them. Most of the times it's emotional pain that our parents caused us and that we walk around with. And like I said, it doesn't show itself everywhere, but maybe on a car ride or at the dinner table, on a call, it just rears its head. And that pain kind of comes back, but we push it down. We push it down because our parents are great. Parents are good. They're just doing their best. We have to not acknowledge this pain, but we can't. We can't walk around with that burden, and that is a burden. Jesus tells us that we must forgive the trespasses of those who sin against us. And of course that applies to our parents. We got to forgive them. We got to find a way to forgive them for the wrongs that happened to us. Even if we can't think of it right now, if we do, then we got to forgive them. We can't just internalize it, and we can't just stay angry at them. None of those things will solve it. None of those things will help us grow as Christians. And we got to do this as ASAP as possible, as Michael Scott says it. We got to do it fast. This forgiveness, it just gets harder as you get older. It just gets harder as you get older. Eventually, we will not recognize it anymore, and that pain, those mistakes, will be poured out on our own kids. And chances are on their kids, and so on and so forth. We have to forgive. We have to let go. We have to let go of this burden and become better. And this applies even when the parents are gone, because one thing about forgiveness, it's not on them. It's not on the parents to apologize. It's on you to find space to forgive them. Whether they're with you or they're not, whether they're a phone call away or a few feet away, it's up to us. It's up to us to forgive them for those wrongs and those mistakes. And I think we'll do it. I think we as a church will do it. I think God will bless us in this. And I hope you can find that forgiveness. I hope you can find not only that forgiveness, but the freedom that comes with it. The freedom that's going to help us truly honor them. And if I can't do much to help you in this from this stage, I mean, honestly, I can't do much from the stage, period. But I can say this. Maybe this will start the healing process, but your parents and my parents, and this is the truth, they did the best they could. At the end of the day, they did the best they humanly could with a love that was selfless, and that was a pure love and a good love. So there you have it, obedience and forgiveness. If we can start on those two things, then we will be honoring our mother and father. And in that, we will be honoring each other, and we will be honoring God. And of course, the last thing that I want to touch on are the little things. I was sitting with my parents the other week, just kind of discussing this sermon. I'm like, I'm preaching on honoring your parents. And they're like, really, you? No, I'm just kidding. They didn't say that. They're great. I was speaking to them, how can I honor you better? I know I didn't always honor you. I didn't always respect you the way I should have. And they're like, at this point, Mike, we don't need much. We don't need much. I don't need to prostrate myself in front of them, and just bow down in their presence. They don't need much. They said, what we do need, maybe call in nowadays and just ask for advice. Just come in, ask for advice. Maybe you don't even need the advice. Maybe you're not going to follow the advice. But just ask for it anyway. Because that lets them know what's going on in your life. What are your big decisions? What is your big progress? And you know how much joy that brings them? I don't know. I'm not a parent. But apparently, according to my parents, it brings them so much joy. So ridiculous amounts of joy to ask them or to share. What are these little things? Just a simple call. Just a simple comment. Maybe it's asking about their day. Asking them for once, how was school? How was work? Asking your parents how they're doing, treating them like they're human beings. Really show them that you love them. And in these little things, in these tiny little comments and moments in life, we will be honoring our parents according to that great foundational commandment. And of course, what better day to do it on than on Mother's Day? Now, if you don't call your mom today, I mean, I know what you're doing in church. It's not going to help you. That was a joke. I'm so sorry. No, thank you for coming to church. But today of all days, we honor our mothers in particular. For all the pain caused, for all the sleepless nights, literal sleepless nights, you know what I mean? Worrying about us. No matter how old your mother is right now. For all the heartbreaks and all the dreams sacrificed and all the money spent and all the work performed and all the duties fulfilled, we honor her today. So, it's a rather short sermon, but I hope it's effective. I hope we end this week and start the next week honoring her and him in the way that God told us to honor them. Through obedience, through forgiveness, through doing the little things. Honor your mother and your father. Love your neighbor and love your God. Amen. Let's stand and pray. Lord our God, you gave us one of the greatest gifts ever known. And though we may never always appreciate this gift, or even feel like we love this gift, or even feel like we need this gift, God, this is one of the most amazing gifts you give us, and that is our parents. That is our authority figures. That is our guardians. That is the people we call our parents. And Father, this gift just keeps on giving. And so, Lord, will you help us today to honor our parents, to forego our pride in favor of forgiveness, to forego our pride in favor of obedience, respectful obedience, and to always honor them. God, on this day and on every day after this, God, help us to remember our parents and to honor them as they should be honored. For in this we show honor to ourselves, to our neighbors, and to you, God. And thank you. Thank you for the opportunity today to preach and to see these wonderful people from the stage. I hope you bless them, you bless this church, and in your name we pray. Amen.